Because it's March, first weekend of March, we're gonna have asphalt.
Okay.
So that way we're going to get a list started.
Yep.
On top of mine.
Okay. Will do.
Good morning.
I can't do this. Not today.
Did you find out anything we did? Which item? The bridge. It's at Clunks, but it's not Clunks. I know where it used to sit at. It used to sit right there on the side of the.
You wanna go look at it?
I'm about to right now.
I'm gonna text him your number and let the guy contact you.
Okay. So we've been peripheral.
There wasn't any sort of date. I'm gonna text him your number and have him call you.
We had a construction contract on there for water service.
Did you get them emails I sent you on?
They typically, if they make it to the board, they're already kind of, it's a good chance that there's 40 to 100 some tension on Listen to the board members too, so probably what time they're going. Yeah, that's what I'm figuring. Once you get those resolutions out,
He usually checks it just to see.
makes it go a little quicker.
Super fast.
Yeah.
That's what I was figuring. That's the kind of guy that wrote those things.
Okay, all right. Good evening. Good, good, thank you.
I ran into, was it to the redevelopment commission meeting? Last week, all day was there. I think they were about to take this. You and Jorge ate the redevelopment.
We did this week? What do you mean?
When they're talking about that project. Yes, they, Unite design projects.
Car design, construction. Jason Cockle, the engineer, yesterday. He's supposed to be sending something off the state. All we want to do is talk about putting the connection point in a box instead of having it be an open. Where all where the basin on the inside comes in. Talk about putting that connection point in the structure instead of leaving it open.
Yeah.
I want to create.
Sign it. We just need all the
Just let me see. So, we'll go over and try to program it. And if we need to call John, we can. But show me how to do it, like, so that we can get it set up. And then we'll be able to, like, remote into it from anywhere. I won't have to go over there every time. And I can teach you guys how to do it too.
Different things. You're talking about the neighborhood park you want to build. Okay. What's the issue? You showed me that. Okay. We're gonna try to meet with them. We are trying to get a meeting set up with the developer, to talk about the basins.
For what? Why?
Okay.
She's so quiet. Whisper. It's her morning class. Oh, they don't care. They show and tell.
I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Charlestown Board of Public Works. Today's February 19th, 2020. It's 9 a.m. We'll begin by all rising for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Will join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call, Jim Adams,
Present.
David Reed,
Present.
and of course I'm here. So we have a quorum. If you look at your agenda, I do have a proposed addition. There was a last minute addition that didn't get put on the copy that you received in advance. Under new business, item C, I would like to add the president of the Little League Association, Chuck Deaton, is here to talk about field repairs. And so if you'll pencil that in after the architectural review of the Civic Center building, with that addition, I'll entertain a motion to approve that revised agenda.
So made.
Motion made by David Reed,
Second.
seconded by Jim Adams. All in favor of the approved revised agenda, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? None. Agenda is approved as amended. On to our standing business. I'll entertain a motion to approve the copy of the minutes that were provided to you from our last meeting, which occurred on February 5th, 2020.
I'll make a motion.
Motion made by Jim Adams,
Second.
seconded by David Reed. All in favor of approving the minutes?
Aye.
None opposed, motion passes unanimously. We've also been provided with a copy of the current claims. I'll entertain a motion to approve those claims as they were provided.
So made.
Motion made by David Reed,
Second.
seconded by Jim Adams. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? None. Claims are approved unanimously. And also finally, the payroll allowance docket from February 1st, 2020 to February 15th. I'll entertain a motion to approve that allowance docket.
So made.
Motion made by David Reed,
Second.
seconded by Jim Adams. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. None opposed. Payroll allowance docket is approved unanimously. Is there any sign up for public comment? None? Okay. We have one contract for consideration today. The Louisville Crasher contract. I'll call forward our Parks Director, Marissa Knoble, to introduce that contract.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So basically the contract is similar to what we signed in March of 2017 when the local crashers did come for the beautification celebration back then. The only things that I have seen differently about it is they have upped their charges from $5,000 to $5,500. We would pay 50% of it when we signed the contract and then pay 50%, I think it's a week before the actual contract would, or the actual event date itself. The only other additional thing that I've seen between the two contracts that we signed in previous years to this one is they have upped their technical support staff by one extended person, so instead of 4, it's 5. Right now, currently in the beautification budget, we've got a little over $29,000. So the $2,750 would not be a whole lot of an expense for us right now. I can tell you that we are under contract to spend about $12,000 for a clock that's already been approved and already taken care of. So after that, we would be close to $17,000 if I got the math right. But we seem to be in good shape. This is before any of our new sponsorships for this year would come in. Roughly speaking, Donna says that we get somewhere between $25,000 to $30,000 in sponsorships every year. So we're looking in good financial situation for that. So.
I'll entertain a motion to approve this contract. We can have discussion after it's.
Motion made.
Motion made by David Reed,
Second.
seconded by Jim Adams. Any discussion on this contract?
I just want to make sure that, there's some qualifications in here. I guess we can comply with all their demands or not
The
demands.
demands are very similar to what we've done in previous years.
I just saw, and yeah, we were doing what we did in previous years. I
Right.
just want to make sure that we're doing other things like the platform stage and
Right.
buildings
That'll all
that they were
be-
requiring
yeah.
to be made.
Yeah, we'll take care of all of that. We're gonna use the same stage production that we've used in previous years, so, they're very aware of what their qualifications are coming from, and we'll make sure that that all lines up with that contract as well.
Okay, I didn't want to commit to something that we weren't going to be able to do.
I'm happy to hear this cash flows through advertising and things like that, so
Yeah,
that's good.
yeah, good.
Okay. All right, all in favor of approving this contract?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? None. Contract with Louisville Crashers for Founder's Day is approved unanimously. The next item on our agenda is moving into new business, and Chief Tim Wolf is going to make a presentation on an employee assistance program. The members should have the documents that have made available to them.
Good morning.
Morning.
One of the things, my goals, when I took over as chief, December 12th, 2018, changed our police department and changed the city. That's the day we lost Sergeant Ben Bertram in line of duty. One of my goals when I took over as chief was to look for a program, implement something to where we could support our officers through whatever, counseling, whatever. That was a really tough time, and it still is a tough time. We're still reeling from it. I reached out to the Indiana Cops Organization, Concerns of Police Survivors, and asked them, is there anything we can put in place to provide assistance for my officers? And they, about a week later, they put me in touch with the chief of Southport Police Department, Tom Vaughn. In July 2017, Southport Police Department had a line of duty death, Officer Aaron Allen, who actually went to the academy with Sergeant Bertram. I spoke with Chief Vaughn at great length. We had a very good conversation. But one of the things that they put into place after Officer Allen's death was this EAP program that you have before you. It's an Employee Assistance Program. Basically what this is the city pays a fee, I believe it's $3,600, and this would cover all the city employees. It's up to 125 employees. This covers all employees of the city, not just the police department. And what it offers is counseling up to 6 visits, totally free. That's for employees and their spouses. And it's not just for grief. It can be relationship problems, depression, alcohol and drug related issues, legal issues, financial problems, stress, anxiety. There's a lot of different things it covers. They also help with child care needs, elder care needs, credit counseling, debt management, budgeting. There's a wide variety. You can see in the brochure there of things that they cover. In my eyes, if this was in place, it would be a lot easier if services are needed, all you do is call an 800 number. They give you a list of providers in the area. You choose that provider. You go in and see them. You don't have to pay any money out of pocket. There's no, very little paperwork to fill out. In my eyes, if there's something that we can do, is the city can do for our employees, I think they're going to be more apt to use it. Whether they have to go pay a bunch of co-pays and deductibles and things like that. And speaking with Chief Vaughn, he said almost half of his employees in the police department, and they're almost 50. About half of them use this program. So I felt it necessary. I mean, as police officers, we see and deal with things every day that, maybe we need to go have a, sit down with somebody, a third party, and get some things off our chest. Last year, there was 140 line of duty deaths, accidental felonious deaths in the country. There was close to 240 officer suicides. So you can see that mental health is a huge concern, especially when it comes to law enforcement. And I want to change that stigma and make sure that we have services available to officers if they need it. So that's why, the mayor and I, one of our goals was to put something in place, and looking this over and having talked with another agency that has this, they have this exact program at their department, and he said it's working really good. So I would like the board to consider approving this.
Entertain a motion to approve the EAP program.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Motion made by Jim Adams,
Second.
seconded by David Reed. Is there discussion?
When I reviewed the documents for this meeting, I was impressed to see this because the city is a small to medium-sized employer. These services are needed by employees, whether it's police officers, even more so in that field. So this is I don't know if you'd consider it a benefit to working, but it's very common in other businesses. So yeah, I think it's a really good idea.
We did also check with our existing insurance agents to see if they had a comparable program, and they offer an employee assistance program, the distinction being that one was by telephone only. And Chief Wolf and I thought that it would be more effective to have the opportunity to have a face-to-face sit down with a counselor. And so I asked him to go ahead and come forward with this because I think it's a more comprehensive service, and it does serve the entire city staff, so.
which is good. Now, this contract will will it go fiscal year or from March to March or?
From what I understand, it'll go from the time we implement it, so it would go March to March.
A rolling year?
Yeah.
Okay, so it can be reviewed, you will monitor for usage and get feedback, so just to ensure there's value for the outlay.
Yeah, I think in the summary of services down at the bottom, it says reports quarterly and annual utilization reports provided. All this is very confidential though, I take it.
Yeah, they don't report to me or the mayor who's using it, they just say this many people, you know.
We're only looking
this-
for numbers.
Yeah,
not
this is many
necessarily
people
who
using it.
and what.
Yeah, that's how the chief of Southport, he knew that, I think he said roughly 19 of his officers were using the program. I think there, that's just the police department that has this program. I don't think it's the entire city. Because the way this is priced, it's for 125 employees or less. It's $3,600. So I'm sure that city has, if they have almost 50 officers, then they're gonna have more than 125 total employees. But for us, the price was up to 125, so when the mayor talked, we was like, well, let's just implement for the whole city. Within the whole city, we have less than 125 employees, so. But yes, it's strictly confidential. They don't report to me or anybody who's using it, so.
Do you know for sure that it is, if they were to be assigned to somebody, it would be local, they wouldn't have to go to Indianapolis or
No,
St. Louis?
it is local. They do have, that was one of my concerns, because this company's based out of Indianapolis. I asked them, I said, do you all have people local that's, you know, they could go see? And they said, yes, they do have people local. It might be in Louisville, but they do have local counselors.
Okay.
They wouldn't have to go to Indianapolis.
Anything further? Okay, all in favor of approving the EAP program, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Motion to approve the employee assistance program carries unanimously. Thank you, Chief. Next item on our agenda is an architectural review for the Civic Center building. If you recall, during the last meeting, we talked about the desire to assess this existing Civic Center building for suitability, for usability, to see if it could be repaired and what would be a good idea. So following the board's approval of that, I reached out to 3 architectural and engineering firms. 2 of them responded with proposals for getting us through that initial review. HWC Engineering has sent their proposal, as well as Luckett and Farley. HWC Engineering has folks here in the audience who, if you have questions, they're happy to answer. Luckett and Farley, due to scheduling, is unable to have someone here in person. But we can discuss through some of those, or, you know, we can, this is mainly just an informational discussion type thing before we reached for a vote. I just wanted to make sure we were putting this out for the full review.
Okay.
You've both been provided with copies of them in advance. Essentially, HWC's proposal, if you look at the different scopes, they divided it into a 3-phase, a 3-scope proposal. The first one being the condition assessment report. Trying to find the page where it breaks that down. Which is described on page, well, it's not page number, under scope A, the building assessment. So you can see that they would employ civil engineering, architects, structural engineers, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and they have included a separate contract for environmental consulting that's not in the scope of this original phase. And it would review the existing building, the architecture, all of the systems of the HVAC, electrical power systems, for structural soundness, essentially. And the phase of that would be $13,500. Should we go forward with the schematic design, which is phase B, described in your packet, where they would bring in architects, assess the renovation of the current site or a new build scenario, participate in programming, listen, ask questions. The design team would be involved with this, again, with the mechanical, electrical and plumbing and fire protection, and structural engineering. So that phase would be $34,500. And then to come up with an actual estimated budget of what it would take to rebuild the facility or or renovate the facility would be an additional $4,000. So all three phases of the HWC proposal would be $52,000. I will open the floor to the board members to ask any questions or have discussion on this involving HWC if you'd like.
Yes, the cost estimation looks to be, and I'm speculating, it just looks to be something that's dealing with possibly the schematic design, the new design, not necessarily taking the building and renovating it. I don't know what that cost is based on. If it's based on those new schematic, drawings, I think that's something I wouldn't be interested in. I want to know what the cost is to basically take the building down to a certain level, and I want to know what the problems are within that building. That's all I'm looking for at this point. Because going farther, and I know it's a three-phase thing, it just seems like we're possibly locking ourselves in if we do, the first phase, then we need to do the second phase with the same person, and I'm not sure that's where I would like to go. I'd like to just have the first phase, and that's out of both proposals. I'd just like to entertain mostly the first phase, finding out is the building substantially secure, because I've looked at it numerous times, and to me, we're gonna need to have a professional opinion besides myself, and I think the HVAC is all shot.
Mm-hmm.
Anything inside, I wouldn't want to bring that forward, so anything inside needs to be totally gutted. So I'm just looking for foundation and structural frame.
I guess we can call someone up from HWC if you don't mind, if you would approach and give us your name.
Yeah, I'm Sally Hughes, I'm with HWC Engineering. I have my colleagues, Andrew Moore and Mark Hildebrand with me. That is our understanding, and we can certainly break down the contract to just be for that initial phase that we listed in there.
Would you have some estimate as to what the demolition, basically, to pull it down to just, if, I'm making speculation that the foundation and the steel frame is sound, and that's all that would be left when we demo everything else, because the roof's leaking, the HVAC's gone, everything's gone in it, as far as my opinion. Now, when you go look at it, you may say you don't know what you're talking about, but an estimated cost to demo those items that I feel like are not going forward.
Yes, we can come up with that fairly quickly, but we have not, I've been in the building, I'm the only one that's been in the building, so we didn't make any assumptions as to what could be saved.
Okay.
That's part of our initial assessment.
Again, I'm making an assumption.
Yeah.
I want to get a professional opinion, look at it and say, you're all wet. We can scrub this part of it, but we can keep that part of it.
Sure.
And
That's
so
right.
Dave, let me understand this, so you're interested in the report only, right? The report phase, whether it's Luck and Farley or HWC, it's not the full-blown,
We may not have the money to do that, we may look
it
at
may
it,
not be viable, it's,
may tear the whole thing out and use it for parking lot, I don't know.
right.
Sally, the 13.5 and the phase A of the report, what level would that go to with HWC? Would that provide that assessment to know the structural soundness of it, or could it be used, that kind of stuff?
Yeah.
Yes, I'm Mark Hildenbrand with HWC. Yes, that.
Approach the
okay, I'm
mic
sorry.
so we can
Yeah.
hear you.
I'm sorry.
It's okay.
That is the intent of the assessment, is to do exactly what you're saying, go out and check out the structural soundness of the building. We figured HVAC was probably not gonna be viable, but just to see what's there. And then part of that assessment would be, okay, if we think that, yes, that everything needs to be taken out except the foundation and the structural part of it, there would be a cost associated with that, assigned with the report portion of the assessment.
So is it a fair summary to say that if we were to engage you for just phase A for now of your proposal, that at the end of that phase A, you would be able to say, to answer the question, is the building salvageable, and to what extent, in the sense of how far down would we have to take it?
That was the intent of the assessment
Okay.
portion of it, yes.
Okay.
I like the idea that you've got a team outside of your own people that you brought in, other companies to evaluate what their professional scope usually is.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So for the Luckett and Farley offer, if we also, so they broke it down into 2 phases. Were 2, so they had the evaluation narrative, and meetings, a limited environmental survey, and estimating and budget development. And their total was $14,000 for that initial phase. And then the second phase would include community outreach, the listening sessions, the planning and programming work meetings, and visualization, actual renderings of potential options. They also sent over last minute, and I've included it, just a very rough sketch of kind of their imagining. I passed that out to you guys. Imagining of what the entire facility could look like. They've thought, along those lines, but we're not there yet, obviously. But if we break it down to just their phase 1, if you look in what they were offering with that phase 1, it would include the evaluation process. It's described as saying that it would include the initial site review, for architectural, structural, mechanical, and electrical systems. So during the process, it says they would contract with environmental services to provide some guidance on the potential suspect of growth, to do an initial environmental, budgetary and remediation review. The narrative of findings would include what steps would need to be taken to put the civic center back into productive use. So the general review would include the roof, the exterior walls, openings, etc., the structural system, the major mechanical systems, existing electrical service, and provide a review of the building site, general proximity to other community assets, existing zoning and planning, and the narrative would include a preliminary budget to restore the building. They also, similar to HWC, offer, to report their findings back in both narrative and verbal form. So, the cost of theirs is listed at $14,000. So. Unfortunately, they were not able to have anyone here today, but I'm open to discussion on this if you had thoughts you wanted to share.
There's a lot of verbiage here, and reading through it and trying to decipher, apples to apples. And Luckett and Farley's a good firm. I know them well. I just feel like it's more of a narrative, and they're more interested in moving into phase 2 and phase 3. And I'd rather have boots on the ground, which they would, but I feel more confident in the other proposal right now. This one seems to be a little more superficial, and they're wanting to move forward.
Well, and from a bid perspective, we also have to take into mind cost. And so if both are offering the same services and both are equally good companies, and one comes in less than the other, then I think practically we also have to consider that, especially since if we're looking at just the first phase of getting the decision, what is the shape the building is in, can the building be saved? I think we have to be practical about that as well.
Yeah, this is a community asset, so an assessment needs to be done of its viability and its go forward. So if it's phase 1 and we stop and determine this is not worth it, if we determine after phase 1 it's worth it, sure, we can bolt on the other services. And
well, keep in mind that the long-term procedure here is if we get the assessment and we find that the building is in fact able to be restored at minimal cost, or less cost than building an entirely new building, we're trying to acquire more land or those options, then we would also have to do a formal request for proposals on a bid process,
right,
and go through those steps to do the larger build here. So this is just an initial review of the structure.
Yeah, I wanted to just take that out of the picture. I think we're just looking at the assessment of the existing structure.
And a concern for me is once we get phase 1 back on the building, what are we looking at? Will someone, an entity, will there be some type of small economic study? Is it, yes, we can build it for X, but should we build it? Should we redo it? That's a big concern.
At that cost, whatever that.
Whatever
and
X
we won't have
is.
that information because we don't have the design to base it on. So, it's kind of getting way ahead without knowing, first of all, we just need to decide on this thing.
Yeah.
What's the actual shape of the building?
Yeah, because after that, then we can introduce all the design and all that, and that fluff, if you want to call it.
Viability.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And that can be
that's important to me.
incorporated into that, and it may be a step that we do a viability report before we go into a design of it.
Yeah, yes, okay.
Okay. I will entertain a motion to move forward with the way that the board wants to approve this.
I'll make a motion for HWC.
Okay, so a motion has been made by Jim Adams to accept the initial Phase A only structural review and assessment of the Civic Center from HWC Engineering.
I second that motion.
Motion has been seconded by David Reed. All in favor of moving forward with this assessment, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Motion to approve the assessment carries. Sally, if we can get something drawn up that's
Sure.
just specific to that,
Yeah.
that'd be preferable, and we would need pending funding to move forward with that, so.
So we'll prepare a contract for just the initial phase of this proposal for you guys.
Yep.
And, I just wanna say thank you. I do have a personal interest in this. I grew up going to that building and I can envision it as it was in the 80s. We understand the significance of this piece of property to the city of Charlestown and its residents, so thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And just so that the board knows, I did in fact reach out to three. The other company that did not submit a proposal was Quality Assurance Construction. So, in keeping with the bid process and considering three companies, and I all had received the same email about what we wanted, that we wanted to know if the building was usable and moving forward, so, thank you for considering those. All right, next in the addition to the agenda, I'll call for Chuck Deaton, who is the Little League president, to talk about field repairs.
Good morning.
Morning.
I have a copy of an estimate I'd like to.
And Chuck, if you could give your name and address and all that fun stuff for us.
My name's Chuck Deaton. I'm on the board with the Charlestown Little League off of Steve Hamilton Drive, 152 Steve Hamilton Drive. The estimate you have in front of you is something we come into the board and switched roles there in October of last year. After coming in, we went out, assessed the fields, looked at the concession stand, looked at the property, and kind of just to get a quick assessment of what all we got going on. After looking at the fields, we called Mid-South Baseball. They're a company out of Louisville, Kentucky. Bill Miller from Charlestown, he owns the company, daughter runs it. They come over, done an assessment of the fields, and as you see, the quote total, you've got the major, the softball, the minor, and the senior park. We've got 4 large parks there at the Little League Center. And the total of those costs was $51,140. Breaking it down just a little bit, you can talk about how many loads of infield mix you get. Infield mix is anywhere from $1,700 to $2,400 per truckload. It comes from either Columbus, Ohio, or it comes from Alabama. That's the only places you can pretty much get that. It gets trucked into any facility and then it gets trucked to you. So trucking charges are at least half of that. As you can see on the estimate, most fields are going to take a pretty good amount of work. Ballpark's been there since 1957. Running a $100,000 budget on a $100 bill is pretty much what we're trying to do. The Little League works off of sponsorships each year. So all we work off is if we go to a business, they give us a sponsorship, and we also work off signups. So it's very minimal as to what we could get, and we don't have a 501c3, which we are working, and we're in the process of trying to get. We've tried to attain that for 5 to 10 years now, and it's been a work in progress. But what I've looked at as far as the estimate is the $51,000 would take and completely redo our fields. It would take everything and except for the outfield, but as far as the infields where everybody runs and they're hitting and stuff like that, it'll completely reset the infield from the outfield line all the way to home plate. It's turf planting, it's sod, it's infield mix, it's conditioner, it's a lot of things that the ballpark needs. After hearing a little bit about, the Civic Center from the last meeting y'all talked about, and some of the property that you're all looking at and stuff like that, I'm coming up on the bottom of the second page, you'll see where I've got a note for about $15,860. That note will cover a truckload of infield mix for 2 fields. That's 2 truckloads. I've got it highlighted there on each field and what we're requesting. And then also a powder conditioner on 3 fields. And then it sets up the senior field, which is the largest field in the back, and completely renovates that field, which nobody plays on now, hasn't been played on in 5 or 6 years. What we're trying to do is set that large field up with the Little League buying the temporary fence, about $2,000. We're trying to set that field up to where any age from 7 years old to 18 years old can play on that field. And that would bring our middle school teams that we have 2 or 3 middle school teams that can come and play at the facility as well, and not try to bombard the high school. We have approximately 250 kids each year that come to play at the Little League. So they're anywhere from 3 years old to 14 years old. We also try to incorporate the middle school. That number does not incorporate them. This year alone, we'll be hosting a tournament with District 5 Little League, which we are involved in. That includes HYR, Clarksville, Jeffersonville, Sellersburg, New Albany, and we'll have around 24 teams in the first week of June that'll be coming to our facility here in Charlestown to play. And they'll be playing every night for 7 days straight. They'll be playing every night. So it'll be a lot of kids, 2 games a night, so 6 games total on 3 different fields. But we'll have a lot of people from out of town coming in, which kind of brings money to the Little League and also brings it into town. They're all gonna be coming in, eating and running around, stuff like that. Couple things we've done from a Little League perspective. I don't wanna sound like I'm coming up asking for money for nothing, but, the concession stand, I'm not sure if anybody follows the Facebook pages, but I know how to get it out there, but we've completely renovated the concession stand. Over the past couple of years, we've had a leak in the AC unit up in the attic, and nobody really realized it. And then we got upstairs and looked, and it started to mold. Went to take the ceiling out, and it had a double ceiling. It was drywall, and it was double stacked on the ceiling, so we completely renovated everything in the inside of the concession stand. All new electric, all new insulation, heating and AC has been completely re-insulated and been completely worked over, new plumbing, and we also put a new ceiling in. And we've done that with funds from the Little League that we had a little bit left over after paying our insurance for the year, and then some sponsorships as well.
So you're asking the board for,
$15,860, and that would take care of all the fields and make them safe, playable, and be a good facility for the year.
are the fields playable as is right now?
If I add infield mix, they would be. They do need infield mix added to them. Our brick does.
What about the rest of the facility, like fences, lights, dugouts?
The dugouts are good. The dugouts are brick masonry all the way around. The buildings are in pretty good shape. Just some cleanup and adding some new plywood board or whatever we need to add. Kind of small repairs there. As far as the lighting is the worst part. We've been skipped over, I know, for 7 years in a row because of lighting at our fields for All-Stars. We can't host an All-Star tournament because of the lighting at our fields. And it's been one of those where the latest president that was there the last couple of years is an electrician and has done a phenomenal job at keeping it up, but it's kind of outside of our realm of fixing that. I think it's estimated at $125,000 to $150,000 for lighting per field.
Per field. How many fields do we have? How many fields do we have?
We have 4 large fields.
Chuck, the city owns this property, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you have an active lease
No,
on file
ma'am.
with the city? If the board were to approve the short term, just for the fields for this year, the 15,860, not the 51,000 total renovation,
Yes, ma'am.
considering what's going on. If we were to approve that, would you be willing to enter a lease agreement, official lease agreement with the city, for a discounted rate? Obviously, I think they usually lease it for like $1, but providing financial accountability back to the board, where you would then provide every quarter a financial assessment review of the Little League's expenditures, funds, those kinds of things.
We would
Provide
love
some
to-
accountability to the
Yes,
board.
we would love to see that in the lease. If we was to get one, we would want the financial responsibility to go to somebody else. Right now, it's a board of 13 people, and we kind of look at our own, and I'd like an outside eye looking in like the city. I'd love to have that.
Is this turn the Little League back to the city, or, oh, okay.
Essentially, the land right now and the buildings and structure are all owned by the city, and the
Right.
Little League just plays there with no formal agreement in
Okay.
place. And so, what I'm hearing from, they're fixing the concession building with their own costs, but that's our building, it's a little muddy, and I think there needs to be some delineation there to say, a formal agreement in place that says, for $1, or whatever we want, the Little League can continue to use it, but they're not the only users. I mean, we could potentially, as we renovate the site, if we decide to go that way, this could potentially open it up for some travel ball and all-stars, maybe, those kinds of things. And so I wouldn't want to only limit it to Little League, but I do think it's important that if we're going to reach an agreement where Little League continues to use the property, then there needs to be some accountability going both ways there. So that would be my hesitation on just recommending the approval of funding.
So who's doing capital improvements to it now, other than the concession stand was done out of their pocket, so there's not been?
I don't believe there's been anything done to it. They've pretty much done it themselves for a number of years. Is that correct?
The city has come in the past several years and done some of the cleanup, and they'll give us I'm not sure exactly what it was the past couple of years, Donna may be able to look that up, but they have given a little bit here and there. And like I said, we mainly work off sponsorships.
Right.
I know I was there 4 years ago, or 3 years ago, and when I was there, we had Amazon come up and give us $4,000 for 2 years in a row, and if we get a 501c, the sponsorships would be a lot greater, but when you don't have that, people, they kind of been away from you because they have no way to write it off.
You're actively pursuing that now?
Yes, ma'am.
I'll entertain a motion to approve repair of the fields pending a lease agreement with the Little League that establishes financial accountability reporting. In the amount of $15,860 to be repairs for this year pending funding availability.
I'll make that motion.
Motion made by David Reed,
I'll second.
seconded by Jim Adams. All in favor of tentative funding. Basically, we want to call in for the vote. We approve the $15,860 pending funding availability and the acquirement of a lease. Okay? All right, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Chuck.
Thank you.
The final item of new business is Baker Tilly Financial Consultants proposal, and I believe Paige come forward and talk to us from Baker Tilly.
Good morning. Paige Sandstone with Baker Tilly Municipal Advisors out of Indianapolis, Indiana. We presented to the city 2 separate proposals for services, and I'm going to try to briefly summarize each one because there's a lot of verbiage in there. So one is specifically for a rate analysis on your sewer utility and also an analysis of your trash service, fees potentially on your trash service. So I'm gonna start with that one, and first I will say that Dean Rogers is the partner in our office that is over utilities. He's our utilities expert. He couldn't be here today, but I'm going to summarize his services. If there's any questions that I cannot answer, I will relay those to Dean and get back with you. So the rate analysis for the sewer utility, really it involves analyzing 3 years of historical financial data, and that really is to determine any trends in disbursements and revenues, and of course we would interview personnel from the utility to look for any unusual or significant fluctuations in revenues or expenses. And so from that, we can determine what, going forward, what the expenses are for the cash operations, the maintenance expense, the debt service requirements and improvements for the utility. So the end result then of this rate analysis is to determine if there needs to be changes on your utility rate structure. And of course, we would recommend what those changes might be in order to meet your future revenue requirements. We will also assist in developing a capital improvement plan for your utilities. And with this analysis, we will provide you with a comparative, some comparative information as to your proposed rate structure and how that would compare to other utilities within Indiana that would be similar size to you. So that's one piece of the utility proposal. The other piece has to do with analyzing your sanitation services. So again, we would look at historical data, analyze receipts and disbursements, and determine what rate might be needed based on the number of households, et cetera, for your sanitation fees for trash collection. So those are the two items in that proposal. The other proposal is really in my wheelhouse. It is comprehensive financial planning and budgeting. So one of the services is the comprehensive financial plan, and what we do there, and we do this for a lot of communities all around the state. We analyze historical information, just like I mentioned in the rate analysis, and what we're looking for there is trends in receipts and disbursements. And then we actually provide you with a 5-year projection. So it's a cash flow analysis. You get to see 2 years of historical data and then 5 years going forward. And I have to tell you, this really is gonna make your budget process seamless, because if we do this right before your budget process, we will have already analyzed all of your revenues, so you already know how much you have to spend, and you can really do things like zero-based budgeting, where you say, okay, this is how much I have to spend, now each department, here's what you need to develop your budget based upon those estimated revenues, or what you have available. And this also becomes a great model for you if you're trying to determine if you want to work in new personnel or raises. By having this model available to you, you can work in those additions to your budget to see if it can be sustained in the long term. So I think you would find this type of planning very helpful. We will identify any budget gaps and help you or give you suggestions. We work all over the state, so we may know things that you don't, or that you don't readily see as an option for your community. So we will provide options and ways for you to bridge your funding gaps if we see that as an issue. Another piece of the comprehensive financial planning is a 5-year capital plan. So this is where we would interview your department heads and the elected officials to see what your priorities are as far as capital is concerned. And we would develop that 5-year plan and then work it into the financial planning model, and give you some options as to whether you're gonna fund those with cash on hand, debt service, a combination of both. You know, what are your options for funding those capital outlays? Another piece of, I'm gonna call it the budget services agreement, is this city does not have a cumulative capital development fund. Most cities in the state of Indiana have that fund. It is a very beneficial fund for a couple reasons. One is this, we call it a CCD fund, Cum Capital Development. This fund is outside your current levy limits. So if you establish this fund, you will get a new revenue stream that you don't currently have. Because you don't have a CCD fund, you will have to phase it in over 3 years. But by the time you get to your 3rd year, you should be receiving in an additional $100,000 that can be used for any municipal purpose. It's not just for capital improvements. So it's an excellent fund to have. Again, very few communities are left without one. Most have a CCD fund. So we can help you with the establishment of that fund. There's a little bit of a timing constraint right now because we have to have that whole process complete by the end of April, but you still have time to do it. But that's something we can help you with. We will also, as part of that analysis, determine what the estimated taxpayer impact is for this area, should you establish that fund. And then the other piece of this is annual budget budget analysis. And that really is just to help review budgets that you prepare. And if we do the comprehensive financial planning again, this will be a seamless process because we would have already analyzed all of that for you. So by the time you prepare your budgets, we can just put it into the model to make sure that it's funded and that it's balanced and you don't have any issues. And the final piece of the budget services is looking at potential property tax levy appeals. So how can we find ways to increase your property tax revenue stream? There are a few property tax appeals available through the state that would allow you to permanently increase your maximum levy. So what we would do there is just see if you're qualified to do that and work through that process with the state. So as far as the estimated cost on the utility agreement for the sewer rate analysis, we have a cost not to exceed $7,500. For the sanitation rate analysis, that was a cost not to exceed $4,500. For the comprehensive financial and 5-year capital plan, it's a cost not to exceed $25,000. The CUME Capital Development Fund establishment, it's a cost not to exceed $3,000. And then the property tax levy appeals, a cost not to exceed $4,000. Any questions that you have for me?
Let's go back to the sewer and sanitation.
Sure.
Charlestown seems to be on a pretty high growth climb right now. I mean, is that, since you're doing history, how do you predict that growth?
Yeah.
Do you analyze permits being used or issued?
Right, and this is where interviewing your personnel from your utilities will help with that. Yes, we're gonna look at all of that, analyze all of that.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. That's part of the trending analysis to see what's trending.
How frequently should we be doing the analysis? You know, if we're paying $4,000 for an analysis of wastewater, how frequently is that needed?
Right, so what we see across the state is really you should be looking at your utilities, looking at your rates about every couple years or so, because it's better to to have gradual increases in your rate than wait, let's say 10 years and all of a sudden you have this huge increase. So every 2 to 3 years, it's a good idea to take a look at that.
For perspective, Charlestown has not increased its sewer fees in approximately 12 years. And the last time the sanitation was increased was 2016, I believe. I think it was a slight increase then. I've invited Baker Tilly to come in and speak to us about this, and I'm seeking the board's approval to move forward with elements of this for multiple reasons. One, on the utility side, we have some needs with, Lee Slaughter has mentioned before that they have a truck on the sanitation side that's in great need of replacement. Those are not cheap trucks. As we grow and we're expanding, we're probably gonna need to add an additional truck. We've got brand new subdivision coming in, we have more interest. That's another trash route. And so we're facing those growing pains that are good growing pains, but also that we need to be able to fund. And then on the wastewater side of things, we've already heard from Mike Perry, our wastewater director, that we're looking at some substantial repairs in that regard too. So I think the utility side is definitely a benefit. On the other side of the capital improvements, the city has exceeded its maximum growth, our growth factor for 3 out of the last 5 years. So as our net assessed value is growing with these properties that are coming in, while our tax rate has gone down, we can maximize what's available from that assessed value from those property taxes by doing this levy appeal. And so I think it's definitely worthwhile looking at all of that to see those projections of what we're able to get out of those. And I do think it's worthwhile doing the review for the CCD. So many other communities have that, in fact, all the ones around us. And it's a potential fund there that could help with the items like we know we're gonna need an expanded police force, we know we're gonna need expanded services. I think it's worthwhile looking at that. Plus Baker Tilly has an excellent reputation. Dean, who she mentioned, has worked in the past with the city and with the clerk treasurer and has a very good rapport and relationship there. So I would entertain a motion from the board to allow the clerk treasurer to enter into an agreement for these financial reviews of the utilities and the capital development.
I'll make a motion.
Motion made by Jim Adams,
Second.
seconded by David Reed. Is there any additional discussion?
On the CCD, is that linked to property taxes? Would that change our property taxes?
Yes, it would change your overall property tax rate. The maximum rate is 0.0333, so it should have a minimal impact, but that's part of the analysis to show you what that impact would be. And if your assessed value continues to increase, the impact will be even more, minimal. Because as tax rates go up, it takes as assessed values go up, it takes a lesser rate to generate the revenue you need. So, the impact should not be significant, but we will investigate that for you.
All we would be approving today is the review to see what that impact would be. We're not moving forward from that. That would be a totally different procedure. Yeah, just want to know what the impact could possibly be and what the return.
Okay.
I have a legal question. In the last several years, the SEC has changed the fiduciary rule, and I can't say that I'm fully aware of exactly the impacts. Would this create a fiduciary relationship under the rules as they exist now?
We are municipal advisors, so everything that we have laid out here, we are able to do that independently. Is that what you mean?
Well, the definitions regarding financial advisors and whether they specifically owe a fiduciary duty changed in 2018, changed again in 2019, and I just don't know whether financial advisors to a municipality are still within the bounds of what creates a fiduciary
Yes,
relationship, or
absolutely.
they've been exempted from it.
No, we have not been exempted from that. Nope.
Thank you.
We're registered municipal advisors, which means we have a fiduciary duty towards any of our clients, or with any of our.
That answers my question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Hearing no other discussion, all in favor of allowing the clerk treasurer not to enter into an agreement for these studies, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries unanimously. Thank you. The department reports should be short and sweet today. Most of our department heads have said that they don't have very much to report. And so we'll just go down the list and not tell them if they have nothing new to report, just to kind of pass. So communication and multimedia. Leah Lau.
Hi, I'm really hoarse today, so I'll keep it short, please, Mayor, and because of that. Website, the current website, we've made some changes to be able to update it. We're updating it now. Simultaneously working on a new website, new parks website. Signs are fixed. Thank you to Tubby for taking that on with the electricians. Don Spencer's been very helpful in helping us get them reprogrammed. The other sign will be up today, tomorrow, whenever I can get over there. So there's other things going on. If you have a question, I'd be happy to answer it, but she's giving me to keep it short.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Chief, did you have anything else to add? Tubby for streets and drainage, nothing new. Lee for sanitation, animal control, he's got nothing new. Mike Perry for wastewater, nothing new. Marissa, did you have anything else for Parks and Rec? Planning and zoning, Mike, do you have any updates? What about city services? Tobin?
Sure, just do a couple, just kind of let you guys know what I've been up to. Good morning, board. Been working with constituents to provide some city services. I had a couple reach out to me about some potholes that we've had looked at that will be getting fixed soon, and then a couple more of the autism child signs have been placed this morning, I believe Tubby said. Been meeting with some officials from some neighboring cities, Jeffersonville and Albany, and some nearby agencies to kind of get an idea of some best practices, figure out, some key who's who players in the region. Since I'm new to this position, kind of getting advice from people that are more established. I've coordinated efforts to update the City Hall's phone system, so if you call City Hall, you have a new directory and a list of options to reach different offices here. Still researching grant opportunities, had some meetings with OCRA, the Office of Community and Rural Affairs officials, and then I've also been attending some events and board meetings hosted by agencies such as the River Ridge Commerce Center, KIPTA, Indiana 811, 17 Indiana, and Louisville Business First. So just kind of getting out into the community, building a network of expertise, and looking forward to what's ahead.
Tobin also recently updated our census financial requirement from the census. Wanted to have a financial update, so that took actually a lot of time. So that was really huge for him to have done that. So. Thank you, Toby. Okay, Donna, did you have anything for the board? All right, I have no specific update other than what we've done either, other than to say thanks for coming. And I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion made.
Motion made by David Reed, seconded by Jim Adams. All in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
Hearing none opposed, we are adjourned.